Hello friends! It's Cody. I'm here to talk to you about mental health and how I give myself fun time instead of completely climate grind time, because that's super important. A lot of climate activists don't acknowledge the toll that climate activism takes on their mental health because they think that will make them make their organizing less important, or think that other people will look down upon them. But in reality, almost all of the climate organizers that I know have struggled with their mental health at some point and have had to come with some sort of way to combat burnout or just overall depression. Some of it can be clinical depression, like the textbook definition of depression or anxiety or personality disorder. There's a bunch of different mental health stuff, but a lot of it is climate sadness, climate grief, climate anxiety, which is something that a lot of people talk about. So I struggle with climate anxiety, and I think it's really easy to struggle with climate anxiety because we see these reports and we see these deadlines. We see like 11 years, we see mass extinction, and it's hard not to wonder, what if we don't make it? Or what am I really doing for the movement? But in the end, we have to put those fears aside, because those fears will stop us from organizing and stop us from doing what we have to do. And organizing can be a really great way to combat climate grief or climate anxiety. You can call your reps to, like, that can be the thing that you've done for the day. You can start or sign a petition. That stuff is super good, but sometimes you just need to detach yourself from the climate movement for an hour or a day or for a week, and that's okay. I've done that before, and I'm going to talk about what I did during that week and how I combat that. So, I combat a lot of climate grief and anxiety by action, by calling representatives, by educating myself, educating others, planning actions, planning rallies, stuff like that. And planning for the September week of action has really helped with my climate anxiety for a while. But I think tomorrow I'm gonna have to do a self-care day, because I've used a lot of my emotional energy for this week organizing for the September week of climate action, and the day after tomorrow I'm going to a climate summit in Iowa with the organization Future Coalition, which I'm super excited for. Don't get me wrong, but it's hard, and I can't be around climate for that long without inevitably feeling depressed about our time limit, which is fine. It's fine, and it's hard. You don't usually hear it from a therapist or from someone on a crisis hotline, because it's not that talked about, but it's very much here. And so I'm just going to talk about some fun things that I do, and hopefully we'll be doing tomorrow. So, I love podcasts. It's the most nerd stuff, but I love it so much. I listen to a lot of podcasts from some folks, some super awesome, amazing folks, the McElroy family. The brothers are Justin, Travis, and Griffin, and they all have podcasts with their various wives and nieces. Justin and his wife Sydney do a really great podcast that I love called Sawbones. I have their book right here. It talks a lot about how we've looked at medical conditions through the ages, and some of it is gross and some of it is depressing. They've talked about their mental health before on the show. They've talked about the birth of their kids. Some of it's personal, some of it's weird stuff, modern stuff that's happening, and it's just so good. they debunk a bunch of myths, and I can, whenever I'm using up too much emotional energy from having medical debates, I'll just send them one of their podcasts, and it's just very good. Travis and his wife Teresa, they do a wonderful, delightful podcast called Schmanners, where they talk about extraordinary etiquette for ordinary scenarios. It's just, they have a really sweet relationship, and it's very adorable. My favorite, just because it's very wholesome and I can just listen to it and forget about stuff for an hour, is Rachel McElroy and Griffin McElroy's podcast, Wonderful. It's literally, they just talk about things that they love for like a half an hour or an hour, and it's amazing. It's so good. It's so good. It's just so good. Like, so genuinely just very sweet and lovely and wonderful, and it gets me turned on to like a bunch of new music and books and media, but it's also just like, it reminds me that there's good stuff in the world, and it's just very wholesome. Yes, that's all very good. I listened to the Ecosia podcast, which is a podcast about the Earth from the people who run the search engine Ecosia, which I talked about before on this channel, and it's super cool. Some of them they have like experts on. They'll talk about reforestation, climate action, climate solutions, bunch of cool stuff. I really like 99% Invisible. I like what's it called? It's the Thanksgiving podcast that the McElroy brothers do with the worst idea of all time people. The Worst Idea of All Time is a really good show. Till Death Do Us Part is just like a funny and silly and wonderful podcast by the McElroy brothers and the boys who do this podcast called Till Death Do Us Part. They just watch the movie Paul Blart Mall Cop 2 every year, and they talk about it. I think they've done it like 5 or 4 times now. It's so good. They just like put such good shit into the world. They do this, the McElroy brothers do this podcast with their dad that I love so much. It's called The Adventure Zone. It has such great LGBT rep, and it's so good. There's like great, like, there's like a gay wizard named Taco, and what other show has a gay wizard named Taco? And it's just great. They're just like such a good family. There's a podcast about the McElroy brothers called called The Good Boys Girls. It's 2 girlfriends talk about the McElroy content, and it's just super awesome. And the girls that do it are really funny, and it's a very good show. 99% Invisible, Roman Mars, it's super good. I've heard good things about My Favorite Murder. I'll just do a whole episode about podcasts later. That's fine. By podcast, I mean basically Dungeons and Daddies, as a wonderful podcast by 3 wonderful boys and 1 wonderful girl. I'm blanking on their names, but they do another podcast called Story Break, where they make up stories based on like Jar Jar Binks, or just like not really talked about characters in different seasons, but it's just like a bunch of dads playing D&D. No, the dads don't play D&D, but like they're playing D&D with their characters who are all dads or stepdads, and it's just very wholesome. I'm looking at my bookshelf now to see which books I want to talk about. Okay, so the Adventure Zone people made a graphic novel with the awesome artist Carrie Peach. She is super cool. It can be found wherever books are, pretty sure. I haven't looked because I pre-ordered it, but I'm sure it's out there. The author I really like called Benjamin Senes. I believe is how it's pronounced. He wrote Aristotle and Dante discovered the secrets of the universe and the inexplicable logic of my life. It has a lot of really great Latinx representation and really great LGBT representation. I recommend it a lot. There's this series of essays that I really like. It's called Once I Was Cool. It's by Megan Stylestra. She is just like the most wonderful storyteller. She writes about her life and about the things that she's gone through, anxiety and wonderful stuff like that. I highly recommend it. So this wonderful YouTuber that I really love, her name is Dodie. She wrote a book. It's called Secrets for the Mad. It has very good cover art. And it talks about her experience with anxiety and depersonalization, getting meds therapy, as well as being a musician, friendships, relationships, jazzy stuff. It's super cool. She has a bunch of like song demos and like art. It's very beautiful. I highly recommend it. I'll put her channel down below. Yes, she's bi like me, and she makes a lot of really good music and very like some of them are bops and some of them are sad bops and some of them are just sad, but like either way, very good. I'm looking at Harry Potter right now. I just have to mention it. J.K. Rowling has some problems, like she has pros and cons, like she's transphobic, but also she was the first billionaire to ever get off the Forbes billionaire list because of charitable giving, which is a super cool thing to do. I'm definitely a Hufflepuff. I'm like so Hufflepuff. Hufflepuffs are very underrated, and I will fight anybody who disses on Hufflepuffs because we are 10 out of 10. Musical theater. I love musical theater so much. I love Hamilton in the Heights, all Lin-Manuel Miranda content. I eat it up. Lin-Manuel Miranda actually did an audiobook of Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe. I highly recommend it. Next to Normal, very good show about mental health. I believe it deals with bipolar disorder, and it's super jazzy. Be More Chill is like a high-tech mental health, but also like LGBT rap and relationships and high school drama. Very, very quality. The new musical of 6 about all of Henry VIII's ex-wives, and they basically like come together like woman power. Nothing can stop them. They are cooler than Henry VIII will ever be, and it's great. And they talk about how no one tells the stories of how cool they are because of how attached they are to Henry VIII. Hadestown is amazing. I actually DM'd Hadestown on Twitter because I noticed that their DMs were open, and I was like, this is never gonna work. And I was like, I've been trying to spread the word about the September 20th global strike, and I noticed that Hadestown's DMs were open, and I was like, well, it would be super cool since they're in New York if they could talk about like the cool stuff that's happening in New York on September 20th, like Greta Thunberg and Jamie Margolin and cool stuff like that. And I was like, they're probably not gonna reply. But then I messaged them, and then the next morning I woke up and they had replied, and they said I was doing a good job, which is like, oh, I'm such a fanboy for them, but like, I love them. Orpheus is my dream role. Or Persephone. Like, Persephone is one of the only women roles I would be okay with playing, like, in a theater, but I just love her voice and her character so much. But Orpheus is like, I feel so comfortable with his singing, his like tone, his range, his character. I would love to be him. And I love Reeve Carney, who's currently playing him. Yeah, it's just very quality. Yeah, so burnout is real, mental health is real, depression is real. Take care of yourself, please. Do it for me, do it for the movement, do it for the revolution. You can't give it all if you have nothing. You cannot give everything if you have nothing. So make sure there's something in that old can of yours, and I promise tomorrow I will be doing that for myself. Yeah, so take care of yourselves. Stay safe, stay snazzy, do what you can. Peace out.